Good morning, grade 9. For today, we are going to give the definition of the conjugates and how to rationalize, and also what is the purpose of rationalizing. So, in the beginning, our purpose or our aim it is to solve the exercises at the page 108, number 20 and 21. In the beginning, what is the meaning of conjugate? I'm going to give you examples to deduce the definition of conjugate. As you know that the conjugates, like if you have a radical 2 minus a radical 3, the conjugate is a radical 2 plus radical 3. If you have like 1 minus 4 radical 5, the conjugate is 1 plus 4 radical 5. Now, if you have like radical 17 plus radical 2, so the conjugate of radical 17 plus radical 2 is radical 17 minus radical 2. Now, what is the conjugate of a radical 5? It is like radical 5 minus 0 or plus 0, it will be radical 5. Okay? So, the conjugate of a radical, only one radical, it is itself. But if you have minus between them, look here, when you have two numbers, one of them is radical or the two are radicals. To write the conjugate, we are going to change the sign into its opposite. If it was minus, it will be plus. إذا كان minus بنحط محله plus. وإذا كان plus شو بنعمل؟ We change into minus. Let's do as application some samples of the exercise at the page 108, the exercise number 20. So I'm going to read the question. So we are at the page 108. We are at exercise number 20. We are going to perform some parts of this exercise. The question is to write or to give, it is to match each of the expressions E and F in the first column to the second column by its conjugate. So in the beginning, I'm going to start by mentioning what is the conjugate of 1 minus radical 3. What is the conjugate of 1 minus radical 3? You have to change the sign here into plus, exactly. 1 plus radical 3. So 1 plus radical 3, it is the conjugate of 1 minus radical 3. What is the conjugate of radical 5 plus radical 7? Yes, radical 5 minus radical 7. Exactly. Now, what is the conjugate of 2 radical 3 plus 3 radical 2? What is the sign here? What do you have as sign? Plus. So, to write the conjugate, we have to keep 2 radical 3. We change the plus into minus 3 radical 2. Now, what is the conjugate of 6 radical 6 minus 5 radical 5? So, what is the sign? The sign is minus. So, we need to change the sign into plus to have the conjugate. Now, you have a clear idea about the definition of a number and its conjugate, how to find the conjugate of a number. Now, this is about exercise number 20 to find the conjugate of each of the number. So you get the idea now. It is so simple and easy. The second part, what is the meaning of rationalize? And what is the purpose of rationalize? Why we do rationalizing? Look here. As you know, if you have a fraction, any fraction, نحن أول ما بلشنا المراجعة اللي كنا عم نعملها بلشنا نعمل مراجعة على الفراكشن. ليه؟ لأنه كل الأشياء اللي بعدين حتجي it is related to the fraction. The fraction is a division. So let's remember this part. جينا قلنا لما حكينا عن الفراكشن قلنا إذا عندنا 3 over 5 if I need to use a calculator I can find the value of 3 over 5. Also if I have 1 over 3, 1 divided by 3, you have a number. But if you have like to find 7 over 0, in this case 7 over 0 it is undefined, okay? It is undefined, there is no value, you can't find the number. Now, if you have like 1 over radical 2. Now, radical 2, look to this part. This is very important to recognize why it is important to rationalize. Radical 2, it is a number that is infinity number after decimal point. Yani you are dividing by a number that is infinity, that tends to infinity or tends, it's going to infinity. So therefore, there is no sense for this division. We need to write it as another form to be clear for us. We are going to do rationalizing. The question is how to rationalize the 1 over radical 2. We have radical 2 down, only one radical. It's not added, not subtracted to any number. ما جمعين عليه رقم ولا منقصين منه رقم. So in this case, we are going to multiply the numerator by radical 2 and the denominator by radical 2. Now, how to continue? 1 times radical 2 is radical 2. Radical 2 times radical 2, it will be radical 2 to the power 2. So, as you know that radical 2 to the power 2, it's mean the power 2 and the radical, they eliminate each other. So, it's radical 2 over 2. هلا صار شكلها انه انا عم بقسم على نمبر هو finity number radical 2 over 2. So rationalize 1 over radical 2, it is by multiplying the 1 over radical 2 in the numerator by radical 2 and in the denominator by radical 2 to have the form radical 2 over 2. Another example of rationalizing, this is the first case. The second case, it is like if you have 5 over 2 plus radical 11. Here you have a number added to a radical. So in this case, the first step that you are going to do, you have to put parentheses. This is what you need to do. Second, you need to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate of 2 plus radical 11, that is 2 minus radical 11. So we need to multiply numerator and denominator by 2 minus radical 11. So how to continue? In this case, so 5, we multiply numerator by numerator, denominator by denominator. This is how we multiply two fractions. So 2 plus radical 11 times 2 minus radical 11. Now, look down, a plus b times a minus b, it is a2 minus b2. So 5 times 2 minus radical 11 over 2 to the power 2, that is a2, 2 to the power 2 minus radical 11 to the power 2. أكيد فوق فينا نوزع هيدي ال 5، فينا نتركهم هيك. 5 times 2 minus radical 11. يعني you can write it 10 minus 5 radical 11 over 4 minus 11. So, in this case, you are going to subtract the denominator down. بطل أنا عندي محل حكفي هون in this space. So you can write above, you can distribute, and you can keep it the same. It's up to you. So it is 10 minus 5 radical 11 over 4 minus 11 is equal to 7. 7 or minus 7? Minus 7. Okay? طيب هيدا how to rationalize using the conjugate in case where you have adding or subtracting. Another example. So let's do like another example like 2 over 1 minus radical 5. Yalla, help me. So first of all, we need to put parentheses. Second, we need to multiply by the conjugate since we have a number subtracted to the radical. So what is the conjugate? Exactly 1 plus radical 5, 1 plus radical 5. So second, what do we have to do? We have to apply the rule a minus b times a plus b equal a2 minus b2 in the denominator. So it will be the first number is 1 to the power 2 minus radical 5 to the power 2. So it's equal to 2 times 1 plus radical 5 over 1 minus 5. So what about 1 minus 5? دايما بتنسوا لي الماينس الآن. 2 times 1 plus radical 5 over what? Over minus 4. Now we can simplify by 2 up and down and it will be 1 plus radical 5 over minus 2. You can write it also by another way. You can write like minus 1 plus radical 5 over 2. Why? Why we can write this minus above? Remember that in the lesson of fraction, if you have minus in the numerator, minus a over b is equal to a over minus b is equal to minus a over b outside the fraction. Therefore, you can move this minus numerator, denominator, or outside the fraction.